Just want to go over today's lesson. There are a few misconceptions, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to address them today. So if you look over here to the right, I have our chapter from today, and to the left, I have our um, exit ticket. Well, actually, let's look at our classwork first, and then we'll take a look at our exit ticket. The wrong one open. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through it and remind you of a couple of things. So one of the misconceptions is we're confusing this lady right here. We call, this lady, that they refer to as the Negro lady with the snappy oval bag, with Delphine, our narrator. So this lady, if we remember back to the previous chapter, they called her the Kennedy, right? The Negro Jackie Kennedy, I believe, is how they refer to her in chapter 2. So you're confusing her with Delphine, who is our narrator. These are two different characters. So let's take a look at question 1. How would Big Ma have felt about the Negro lady with the snappy oval bag? Now, remember from our annotations this morning in our mini lesson, we focused on the fact that Delphine says that she was going to tell Big Ma that this lady looked after her, right? To keep her from worrying. So this would suggest, remember, we have to make that inference based on the text. If this was something that Big Ma had expected this woman to do for her, right? She said, "Please watch after my grandkids," and the lady gave her a nice smile. So she assumed that this woman was going to take care of her grandkids and just kind of keep an eye on them, right? But when they actually land at the airport, this lady does not even pay them any mind. She just walks on by, right? So the reason why she's going to lie to Big Ma is because she didn't want Big Ma to feel disappointed, right? Thankful would suggest that this woman actually did look after them. So the lady actually walked away. So she wouldn't feel thankful that she didn't do what she asked them to do. Ashamed would mean that she felt guilty or embarrassed. So no scenario would suggest that Big Ma feels embarrassed about the fact that the lady wouldn't watch them, or even if she did watch them, she wouldn't be embarrassed. So that leaves me with disappointed. So she put her expectation in this woman, and this woman let her down because she did not look after them. So yes, she would feel disappointed. So why would Big Ma have felt this way? So all I was looking for here was you to use that schema and the evidence to explain how you came to that inference. So we just walked through that together. We know Big Ma would have felt this way because she had asked this woman to do something and she didn't do it, thus letting her down. So like I said, I just wanted you to explain it. It was very clear to me that some of us didn't really understand the question. A lot of us were talking about the white lady who surrounded them and was trying to give them money, right? That is a different lady. This was talking about the woman at the very beginning of the chapter right here, right? This woman right here. Whereas most of you were focusing on the lady who is further down once they land and trying to give them money right here. So a large white woman clapping her hands like we were on display at the Bronx Zoo, right? So this would suggest that the white woman here, is treating them like some type of spectacle, right? It's not really respectful. She's treating them kind of differently. She wouldn't walk up to a group of white kids and do these things. So that's kind of what the purpose of this part was, is to further illustrate for the reader what the relations between blacks and whites were during this time period. So we were confusing those two women. So let's come back up to the top. Now it says, what piece of evidence best support answers 1 or 2? So we're talking about the beginning of the story of this chapter, right? So the answer should be in the beginning of this chapter. Now remember, we should be looking at the text and asking ourselves, does this help me support that Big Ma would be disappointed, right? So let's take a look. It says the Negro lady with the snappy oval bag didn't give us a glance as she click-clacked on by. So this one is a possibility, right? Because this shows us that the woman just left. But if I look back at number one, it's really asking me about how Big Ma would have felt. So this particular piece of evidence, while it's good and it addresses the situation, it doesn't relate. Remember when we talk about what the best evidence is or the strongest evidence, when we look at those steps, it says that it is relevant to all parts of the question. This isn't relevant to answering how Big Ma would have felt. So let's see if there's a better answer. Although I tell Big Ma otherwise if she asks me, just to keep her from worrying. So let me read that in context. It says, the lady just click-clacked on by. That was fine with me, although I'd tell Big Ma otherwise if she asked, just to keep her from worrying. So she would lie to Big Ma to protect Big Ma's feelings, which would be that she would be what? Worried and disappointed in that lady, right? So this piece of evidence is probably the best piece of evidence out of them. I don't mind, it doesn't address the situation. It doesn't address how Big Ma would feel. So the correct answer should have been B. Most of us got this one correct. Most of us got this question right. And let's see. Let's move to our exit ticket. That is the one that a lot of us struggled with, that short answer. So let's take a look here. So we're looking at our exit ticket now. So throughout the rest of that, you were just kind of outlining important events that happened in the story. You guys did pretty good on the rest of it. But here, we confused this situation. Okay, so remember when we did our mini lesson, I outlined this section. Oops. Yeah. Oops. Sorry, let me redo that there. Got a little carried away. All right. This section right here. So we talked about this section a lot. We annotated this section a lot. We talked about how she's describing what a typical mother does. So she's telling us right here. We want to use black here. A mom does these types of things. Cecile never did, right? So she's saying that this is what a mom does. She takes care of you. She gets you water. She knows your friend. But Cecile, she never did that, right? We have a statement of fact. She's my mother because in the mammal world, if you have a baby, then it's your mother, right? That's what she explains to us in this previous paragraph, right? And we annotated that and we made sure that we made a note of that as well, and that she doesn't refer to Cecile as mommy, mom, mama, which are our terms of endearment. I'm going to fix that. All right. She doesn't refer to Cecile by any of these, right? Because she doesn't feel this way about Cecile. So this alone should have helped you make that connection over here when we're asked this question. But let's go down to whenever she actually saw Cecile for the first time. So we have to come down quite a bit. We have to get past the lady trying to give them money and when she actually sees Cecile. So Cecile came, she said she looked more like a secret agent than a mother, but I knew she was Cecile and I knew she was our mother. So she's suggesting that she's kind of she's covered up. She looks kind of ashamed. She's kind of talking about that. She's like, maybe she didn't want to be seen with us. That's what it felt like. All right. Think about if your mother hadn't seen you in a year and she came to the airport to pick you up. How do you think, this is our schema, right? How do you think she would react to seeing you for the first time? I want you to pause and I want you to think about that. What would she feel? What would she react? How would she embrace you? Would she kiss you? Would she like scream out of joy? Like what would she do when she saw you? All right. So let's look at what Cecile does when she sees her daughters for the first time since she left them as babies. So she says, she called them these. She said, "These are mine. These are mine." This suggests a disconnect. These are mine. That's what you talk about, like a pair of shoes. These are my shoes. That's my shirt. You don't really refer to people as these, as items, right? So this also here, if we want to talk about that disconnect again, this shows that Cecile is disconnected from her daughters, right? This is very important because what we see here is that Cecile isn't motherly, right? She doesn't see them and get excited, call them by name. She doesn't even address them initially. She just says, "These are mine, and let's move along," right? So let's continue. Does she ever show any kind of emotion towards the girls? And if we continue to read, we see that she really doesn't. It says, "Cecile didn't even bother to grab any of our bags. She said, 'Come on,' took 2 wide steps, and we came." She kind of left them. They go on to tell us the gap between Cecile and us spread wider and wider, right? So she wasn't making sure that they were close behind. She wasn't helping them with their bags, which you would expect. These are young girls. So she's a woman and she's there to pick up her daughter. If you had a little girl, let's think about Fern, the youngest. We don't know exactly how old she is, but we have an idea. She's got a baby doll, and we know she was abandoned when she was an infant. So we can make an estimate about how old she is. She's very young. She might need help with her bags and walking through the airport. If anyone's ever walked with little kids, you got to slow down a little bit, right? They have little legs. It takes them a little bit longer, but she's not doing that. She's just moving along. So we want to make sure that we highlight this. She didn't grab our bags. She said, "Come on." So have we seen her hug the girls? Has she um has she hugged the girls? Has she said hi to them? Has she addressed them by name? She hasn't done any of those things. So far, we haven't seen a big connection between them. There's not that mother-daughter relationship. And so as we continue to reading, she said, Cecile's face had no expression. She looked down, she said, "Y'all keep up," right? This is after they're asking, "Hey, she needs help. The baby needs help. Fern needs help." Cecile doesn't care. She has no expression. She has no reaction or empathy. Remember, we talk about that word empathy a lot when we talk about these characters. She's lacking that. She's not very empathetic towards her daughters right here. So it's really important that, I mean, we could stop here and I think that we could answer that question. But if you still are stuck with how to answer it, you can continue reading. And we can see that she just does not really have a connection with the girls or treat them very compassionately or with any type of uh, affection. So this is what we could say. How did Cecile react when she first saw her daughters? Well, this one should be easy because it is very clear that she did not hug them. She was not overjoyed to see them. If anything, she was pretty annoyed about the whole situation, right? So A cannot be right. A lot of people did choose C. They said she was nervous, but this because you stopped at when you saw about her being bundled up and Delphine making the suggestion that perhaps she didn't want them to know that she was hiding from the fact that she had children she would have to explain, right? But if we would have kept on reading, to find evidence, we would have seen that that wasn't exactly why she was dressed up. This is just how she typically looks, right? Because she does go on to take them on a bus, a cab, and she claims them. These are mine, right? So that's not really a good piece of evidence. We don't have enough evidence to suggest that she's embarrassed about having the children. But we do have a lot of evidence, a lot of very relevant, specific, and frequent evidence that we talked about in our mini lesson. If it's frequent, it's repeated over and over again, that might be the answer, right? And it's repeated paragraph after paragraph, more examples of how Cecile did not react affectionately towards the children, right? It's repeated over and over again. It wants to paint a, remember we talked about indirect characterization. It is repeated over and over again. Her actions are showing us who she is. And right now, she is not very motherly, right? So our answer would be she was emotionless and in a rush to get out of the airport. She was like, let's go. And she wasn't waiting on anybody. Okay, so then you need to use all of those different things that we read about to answer this question. This was our big question of the exit ticket. How are Cecile's character traits different than that of a typical mother? So we have to use some schema, some background knowledge, and make some connections with the evidence we're provided to make that inference. So we know up here, she tells us all the things that in her mind a mother would do. We also know in our mind what a mother should do. So some of our experiences might be different. Some of us might have relationships that might not be that great with our mothers, but I think we all have an idea of when we say what the quintessential mother would be, right? And quintessential means the ideal or what you would expect when you hear the word mother or the definition of a mother, right? Based on what Delphine is telling me, we can make an assumption using the background knowledge that we have that when we talk about a mother, we would expect that she be caring and loving and compassionate towards her children. She would want to make sure that if we look at here, they look pretty, that they're cared for, that their needs are met. So the water, that's a basic need. That she knows who her friends are, things like that, right? That there's a little bit of nurturing going on. So we know what the typical mother looks like. And we know based on all of the information we read about Cecile's actions and using that STEAL acronym for indirect characterization, what kind of mother Cecile seems to be, right? She's a little dismissive of her girls. She's not very affectionate. She's cold. There's a lot of definitions that we could use to describe, or a lot of character traits we could use to describe Cecile Johnson as a mother at this point. Okay, and any of those can be used to support your answer as long as it supports how she's different. Okay, so this one was, it was missed quite a bit, but it wasn't awful. Like, I think what we were doing here is we weren't making that connection about what Delphine thought a quintessential mother was, and we weren't making that connection of Cecile leaving them. A lot of us did, and I was really excited to see that, but a few of us need to go back and look at that STEAL acronym and that mini lesson to see, what do her actions tell us about who she is? That is a really important question, and it is an important question that you're going to ask throughout this entire text, because a lot of this book, or most of this book, is character driven, and Cecile's a mystery to us right now. And so for the next few chapters, we really want to get to know her. Who is she? Why did she leave them years ago? What kind of mother will she be going forward? So we want to be reading and asking ourselves, what do her actions say about her? What does she, what word do her words say about her, and so on. So I hope that this has been helpful. And if you have any more questions about this particular exit ticket or this chapter, don't be afraid to reach out and ask.